After the confusion of last week, thanks to the Minister for coming in himself to deal with this issue. And I do note there are a range of issues in relation to resources of Garda Síochána that I discussed with the GRA and the AGSI yesterday. I'm specifically today asking in relation to the resource which the public knows as our Garda stations. And in particular, Minister, I want to ask you, are you aware of this report done by the Office of Public Works with the State Claims Agency and Garda Síochána in December 2016 in relation to review of asbestos surveys of Garda buildings? You might confirm whether you are or not, and whether the Commissioner has informed you of this or not, or your department has informed you of this or not. This says that there are 74 stations affected by asbestos, and the Director of the State Claims Agency at the time, Mr. Pat Kerwin, said that 12 Garda stations in particular were very badly affected and that remedial works would have to commence within 3 months. This is 9 years ago. The work hasn't happened. In Mountjoy, Kevin Street, Naas, Santry, where some works have happened, Bandon, Kilmainham, Ashburn, Newcastle West, Baltinglass, Tremore, Blackrock, Blessington. In January the 3rd, 2017, this report was then sent to the head of Garda Health and Safety and copied to the head of Garda Estate, and it was titled Necessary Attention. We then had nothing. It went into the abyss, Minister. We then also had an issue in Santry Garda Station, which you probably are aware of, where the station ended up having to be closed because of the issue of asbestos. And this happened in January of this year. I do have a query in relation to the certificate given for reoccupation and where that stands. You might come back to me on that. But there is a real issue here, Minister, in relation to, obviously, health and safety issues of exposure to Gardaí, the public, contractors, etc. But also in the correspondence, in the report, Mr. Kerwin, Director of the State Claims Agency, said, and I quote, "Unless the remedial work was undertaken, the State Claims Agency would be unable to defend future claims." Now, how wasn't that acted on? And have we exposed the state to considerable liability? And this is before, Minister, which I'm sure you're aware, the Asbestos Directive from the EU is transposed into law has to be by December the 21st of this year. And that provides for a 10 times decrease in, quote, maximum occupational exposure limits. So if we did not act from 2016 until now to the scale required, if the SCA are saying that we are exposed in 2016, where these Garda stations, and I have the list of them and what is required in all of the stations as well, Minister, if we are exposed to that level, and this directive is going to be transposed and has to be transposed by the 21st of December this year, where does that leave us as regards any Gardaí who have been sick in the intervening years, who've had respiratory issues, who've possibly had issues in relation to cancer, where there's been members of Gardaí that have been pregnant, where there's been issues in relation to contractors, maybe even issues in relation to members of the public? Where are we in relation to this? Why are you aware of this? What remedial actions are happening? What is the plan? Were you told by the Garda Commissioner? Because it looks like he tells you very little in relation to this issue. Thank you.
Minister.
Yeah, thanks very much, Cahir. I want to thank Deputy Kelly for raising this issue, and I just want to publicly apologise for the fact that last Wednesday there was that confusion, because Deputy Kelly had put down this issue last Wednesday and I wasn't here through some confusion in the office. To answer Deputy Kelly's question directly, I'm not aware of the December 2016 report he refers to, commissioned by the OPW and the State Claims Agency in respect of asbestos in Garda stations. I have to say to you, however, Deputy Kelly, I am fully aware that there are very many stations in this country that need to be refurbished and upgraded. Last Monday I was down in Castle Pollard Garda station, down with Deputy Troy, looking at the station there. It's clearly a station that is archaic, it needs to be modernised, and I'm sure it's the case in respect of other stations throughout the country that that is the case as well. Deputy Kelly raises the issue, and I suppose his primary concern, and it obviously would be of concern to me, is the safety of people working within An Garda Síochána stations, whether it be the attested members of An Garda Síochána or indeed Garda staff. Everyone who is working is entitled to ensure that they are working in a safe work environment, and I would be extremely concerned if it was the case that they were not working in a safe environment. I have to will go back and I will look at the report, Deputy Kelly, in respect of what you raised. Obviously, the concern would be if an individual within An Garda Síochána got ill as a result of the presence of asbestos. Fortunately, that hasn't been brought to my attention as of yet, and hopefully that isn't the case. It's certainly the case when it comes to older buildings throughout the country, Cahirlock, that very many of them, I regret to say, have asbestos. It was a material that was perceived as being acceptable many decades ago. So this isn't just an issue that is of concern to An Garda Síochána, it has broader concern. I note what the Deputy says in respect of how we will be able to defend any claims. Like, I have to say to you, I'm not aware as of yet, Deputy, and if you are, you might bring it to my attention. I'm not aware of any claims that have been instituted by retired or current members of An Garda Síochána claiming that they've sustained injuries as a result of the presence of asbestos in Garda stations. If that is the case, obviously it would be a serious matter from the point of view of An Garda Síochána and certainly from the State's point of view. You mentioned that the State Claims Agency indicated in a subsequent report, I think you mentioned from 2017, that it was the case that it would be difficult to defend any such claims. Obviously, I can't comment in respect of that, but certainly it is the case that if claims were put in and there was liability on the part of the State, well, certainly I then would ask that the State, in line with the Attorney General's guidelines, would adopt a very principled approach to that. Any member of An Garda Síochána who did sustain an injury which was caused as a result of the presence and the knowing presence of asbestos in the building, and we expose that Garda to danger, well then there would have to be a liability on the part of the State for that. You also mentioned about the Asbestos Directive. Listen, I'm conscious, and I'm not trying to diminish my responsibility, but there's a lot of issues on my desk in respect of An Garda Síochána. You're raising an issue from 2016. I will look at the report, but in terms of ensuring that as the directive is transposed into Irish law, that's an obligation that we have under European law. We would have to ensure that it is complied with. I will certainly inquire in terms of what is the level of safety in the Garda Síochána. I have to say to you, I haven't got direct complaints in respect of concerns that members of An Garda Síochána have from working in the stations. And I've met the GRA on many occasions. In fact, last Monday I met a representative of the GRA. So it's certainly the case. It hasn't been brought to my attention, but I will look at the report, Deputy, and thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Deputy Kelly.
It's very difficult for there to be claims, Minister, when there's no awareness. I mean, how could there be claims if people were not aware that these buildings had high levels of asbestos? So how could you have claims? How did you even know? Let me repeat something to you that the head of the SCA said. Unless the remedial work was undertaken, the SCA would be unable to defend future claims. That leads me to believe that there's already been a claim, future claims. But either or. We have a situation here where this report was done by the SCA, by An Garda Síochána and the OPW, and nothing has happened, or very little. And we have exposed the State to claims. But also, we've exposed Gardaí, contractors, possibly members of the public, who are not aware, and they may have been ill. How can they make a claim if they weren't aware? How can they make a claim if they did not know that they were exposed? Does this not create a huge risk that you really need to put on top or close to the top of your pile as regards the issues that the Commissioner has not told you about? I read recently you said you can only ask questions. Well, maybe you need to have a truth and reconciliation meeting with the Commissioner. Maybe you need to sit down and say, hey, Commissioner, do you know what? You're out the gap there on the 1st of September. Is there anything else in the long list of issues that you haven't told me about? Maybe you should say, as Minister, I shouldn't have to ask the question. Maybe you should say, Commissioner, there's a thing called Section 41 where you have to tell me things. Maybe you should have told me about this. Maybe this is an exposure to the state. Maybe I should have known. Why hasn't anything been done in relation to it? And many other issues, Minister. And I can guarantee you many of the other issues still have not been brought to your attention. So I would encourage you to have that truth and reconciliation moment or meeting very soon. Otherwise, I'm going to be coming in here on many, many more issues that you're not bloody well aware of.
Thanks, Deputy Minister. To conclude.
Yeah, thanks very much, Deputy Kelly. I suppose the first thing to say, Deputy Kelly, a person's only entitled to take a claim for personal injuries if they've sustained an injury. So in the first protocol, there has to be an injury before somebody can bring a claim and then allege that the injury is caused as a result of, in this instance, let's say, the presence of asbestos. So, you know, people, if they've sustained an injury, it'll be diagnosed when they go to the doctor and they're complaining about a specific illness, it'll be diagnosed, and that's of assistance to an individual then if they're told that they're suffering from asbestos exposure. Most people look around to see, well, where have they been and what could have exposed them to asbestos. In terms of what you say about truth and reconciliation meeting with the Commissioner, I have quarterly meetings with the Commissioner, meet him regularly. I meet the senior management in Garda Síochána. Like, prior to my appointment, I have to tell you, Deputy Kelly, I was always very impressed with the rank and file members of Garda Síochána for the excellent job they do. Since I've been appointed as Minister, I've met a lot of the senior personnel in Garda Síochána, and I'm extremely impressed with them as well in terms of the work that they do. And obviously, you're perfectly entitled to highlight the issues that are a concern to you. But as Minister for Justice and as the person who has political responsibility for Garda Síochána, I have to look at the broader level of work done by the Gardaí, the work they do on a daily basis, whether it's the rank and file members of the force out in the streets and the towns and villages and cities of this country, or indeed the great work they're doing in terms of bringing people to justice before the courts. So, like, I can't adopt a myopic approach in terms of just trying to identify issues which might get some media attention. I have to have a broader assessment of what's in the best interest of Garda Síochána. And that's why when I'm engaging with the Commissioner, I probe him. You've brought things to my attention, Deputy Kelly, and I welcome them being brought to my attention. And when you do, I say I'll raise them with the Commissioner, and I do raise them with the Commissioner. And the same will apply for other people in this House. If a member of this House, because of huge respect for this House, raises issues of concern with me relating to the Gardaí, I'll bring it to the attention of the Commissioner and I'll seek an answer.